You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, the only podcast in the world where I speak to bands about the jobs they've done between tours, pre-COVID, between making records, and how they've made meaningful art in a society where, more often than not, you have to do unmeaningful things to survive. Francis Lung's new record, Miracle, comes out this Friday. I can't wait to go to the record store in Soho and pick up a copy and have it in my hands. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Thank you, Memphis Industries. Thank you, Tom Churchill, for making this happen. Thank you, Sophie Porter, for editing this episode. East London Signature Brew have been making beers with bands since 2011. They've made beers with Mastodon, Idols, Sports Team, and they've just made one with Hot Chip for the summer's festival season. If you go onto their website, signaturebrew.co.uk, you can make an order there. And using the voucher code 101podcast, all capital letters, you can get 10% off your order. All right, here's Francis Lung. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. It's episode 107, so there's lots to dig back into. Lots of amazing guests in the future, I can tell you. And yeah, here we go. This is Francis Lung. Go well. Cheers!
I mean, it's funny because I've literally I'm on my lunch break at work. So, but yeah, I mean, for me and for lots of other musicians, like finding the right part-time job or full-time job to support things is, it's difficult. I mean, you need something flexible, but the things that are flexible are usually sort of low-skilled jobs, and so they're usually low pay as well. So, I mean, for years and years, I've just done, some of the crappiest jobs just to try and get by. But it's usually it's often the crappiest jobs that can be the most flexible. So you kind of you suffer in those hours to get your minimum wage so that you can use your holiday pay to go and play some shows. Yeah, it's kind of the way that it's been for the past 10 years or so for me. But I mean, it makes you really grateful for any opportunities that you do get.
I mean, do you have those times? Have you had those times at those jobs where you thought, I could be using all these hours to do the thing, you know what I mean? To make the thing that I love doing better. That's a conflict, isn't it?
For sure, yeah. I mean, what's interesting is that I did have a little period of time after my first band, WU LYF, split up. I think I was I had enough money to live for maybe a year or something. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to make this album. I'm going to make 2 albums and I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to write so many songs. And in fact, it was probably the least productive time of my life when I didn't have another job. So as soon as I started working, I realized that all my time became more precious, and every spare moment, like you say, is oh, I could be doing this now. I could be doing that. In fact, it was not having the freedom that made me more organized and streamlined. And so, yeah, I've basically spent the past 10 years refining that balance.
And of course, you hear all the time, but, you'd read about it, you read about it quite often, that lyricists as songwriters get, inspiration or find stories in the most unlikely of places.
For sure. For this record, Miracle, for example, a lot of the songs were written while I was working. So I was working as a barista for a portion of the time, writing some of these songs. And I remember that I was making a lot of coffee. I had a lot of checks on, so I was maybe had 10 or 12 coffees to make. And I was thinking in my head, I wish I could be anywhere else. I just want to dye my hair blonde and go swimming in somebody's pool and go drink with my friends. And then to sort of occupy myself, I thought, well, I could kind of turn that into an opening line of a song. And then I started thinking, well, what would the melody be? And so I just had I turned those lines into the first melody of the song. I just want to dye my hair blonde and go swimming in the neighbor's pool with all my friends drinking. Just like sing that into my phone, like in between cappuccinos or whatever. And then when I get home, I just sat there and thought, like, well, what are the chords that go with that melody that I made up? And I probably had about 10 minutes to do that. But then just holding on to those little ideas and little thoughts that you have during your workday, that's how you make songs and have a full-time job.
What a wonderful story that is. And I suppose you could that repetition when you get that initial spark, that repetition can be.
Yeah, sure. So I was like editing that melody as I was thinking of it just in my head and just thinking like, right, I have to remember this. It's
quite a stressful job being a barista, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really tough. But I mean, I think the trick to being a barista is timing your coffees. So you have to say, okay, I can have 3 coffees. I need one when I start, and I need one at about 11 o'clock when I dip, and then one after lunch. And then I have these like bursts of energy that can get me through the day.
Have you sort of sailed too close to the sun there, drinking too much coffee?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a rookie error. It's such another balance in life that's very imperative to work out. I used to work in a definitely the worst job I've ever had was working in a kids play center. So I worked in the cafe of a kids play center, making coffee, cleaning up sick.
Yeah, I just
cleaning up
thinking
God knows what.
Loads of shit and sick.
Yeah, lots of stuff like that. And basically it was horrific, but I had to do something. Like after WU LYF split up, I had experience working in bars before that. I'd worked in a lot of bars as a teenager and stuff. But I thought, musician, I need to work in the day, and I play gigs in the night, and I write songs in the evening, blah, blah, blah. In fact, like the job was like 10-hour days, and I had to, in the mornings, I had to dress up as a giant furry monster and sing heads, shoulders, knees, and toes to nursery age children.
That is brilliant.
For minimum wage.
That's brilliant.
But I couldn't get a job anywhere else because I just didn't have any experience doing daytime work. So, of course, this kids' play center was like, hey, you don't know how to make coffee? You don't really know how to do anything? Come and work for us because we're going to humiliate you.
Well, I was going to say, you having experience cosplaying as a big furry, you could be like a football team mascot. But you always hear about stories about football team mascots actually kind of, they work their way up through corporate that way. I've heard of that before.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe I can do that next.
So I'm glad you mentioned WU LYF because, I mean, obviously that's where that must have taken over your life. How old were you when that sort of started kicking off?
So when it started, I was 17, 18.
Pretty young.
We were friends, really young. Friends from college. It was me and the singer Ellery. We had a band, and then the drummer and the guitarist Evans and Joe. They had a band. And one night, I just sort of ended up at Joe's house with those 3, and we just ended up practicing the next day. It was almost like we just sort of guested in their group.
That's funny.
And then we just kept rehearsing, and eventually you write some songs, and eventually you play a show. It's quite natural, really.
I suppose when you're that young, you're the job stuff's there, isn't it? It's like firmly in your head, but it's not so. I don't know. I can't find the phrase, but it's just not so impending, is it?
I mean, I did work. I was just before I went to university, so my first job was working in the gay village in Manchester. I worked at Bar, which is like a shooter's bar where you buy like, there's no draft beer, everything's like bottles and shots. So when I was 18, I did that, and so the guys would come and get free shots and stuff, and I didn't have any weekends free. I remember that was funny. So in the early days of WU LYF, I was working in this bar, and it was what it was. I also worked in the Ruby Lounge in town, so that was a little bit after that, and they would come and laugh at me because I couldn't pour a pint. I remember the WU LYF guys coming. I'm laughing at me there. It's and then yeah, it was probably just after we put the record out that I could like quit my job and just do music, and we were doing lots of shows, and we toured America twice. From me being like 20 to being 22.
Wow. Wow.
Went to Japan, Australia. It was a crazy trip. And then as soon as it, as quickly as it all sort of gathered momentum, it ended. And we had nothing to do. So, yeah.
Looking back on that now, when it ended, did it feel like pretty, stone cold?
Absolutely, yeah. It was so strange and abrupt. I was definitely very, very lost.
I mean, most people in their mid-20s are lost, let alone when you've done something that you love and then all of a sudden it just stops.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I was definitely lost spiritually. Still am. But it was also the start of something else. Like, it was the start of me doing Francis Long, and yeah, I had started making some songs under that moniker. I had a little Tumblr page that I set up with the intention that, like, okay, so we all wrote songs in WU LYF, and maybe I'll get better at writing songs if I write some by myself. So I just started doing it like that. And then when the band ended, it seemed natural that, like, okay, well, I'm going to do this as a full-time thing. I'm going to be this solo artist. I'm going to be a lead singer somehow. And I remember thinking when it ended, like, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll work any job. I'll do anything. Thinking, I was so naive. I was like, it's easy to be a solo artist. I'll get signed just like that. And and 10 years later, I'm still working, and really grateful for everything that I've been able to achieve and records I've put out and everything. But it's just funny because I told myself, like, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. But I really did.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, you have to, right? I mean, it's just making me
think... anyone else would, yeah.
I think one of the hardest things about individuals playing in groups is, that group mentality is amazing, and that kind of spark and that kind of energy is great. But you have to be in it for yourself as well, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. It's just funny because the main difference immediately that I found going from the group aspect to it just being me was that decisions are so much faster. It's great. I mean,
yeah.
Nobody was listening to my music, but that was okay because I didn't have to fight with anyone to finish the song. Or if I wanted to do something silly on a video, like put Japanese subtitles on a video that didn't make any sense. No, it wasn't that. The video for Age Limits, which was the first thing I put out, it has Japanese subtitles for David Bowie Heroes. Now, that idea never would have survived in a group setting, so I don't think.
Did you have a bit of a hangover from that group mentality? Did it take you a little time to adjust to doing things yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it just took me time to adjust to being self-sufficient and learning how to construct every other part of the song. I guess the Francis Long thing has never really been a band. It's never been other people lending their ideas and things into it. It's been me slowly learning how to be every member of the band. And that's taken a long time.
That's a lot of work.
Maybe. But I didn't really have any other way of doing it. So it's cool that I've got to this level now where if I want to make a record like for the last one where I played all the instruments, I could do it because that's what I've been working on. And I prefer it that way, not because I don't like playing with people, but you can change things at the last minute, which I really like. And it's hard if somebody learns the part and then you go, oh, by the way, can you totally change that? They get quite annoyed.
How was it learning to play drums?
I mean, that was my first instrument, actually. So before playing bass or guitar,
got you.
When I was 14, 15, I started playing the drums. I just lied and said that I could play drums to get into a band. And one night I just went home and learnt one beat. Came back into high school the next day and was like, Well, there you go. What more do you need?
Do you know, that's so funny
then-
because Ryan from Yard Act from Leeds, he did exactly the same thing. His first band, he just said he could play drums
Really?
when he couldn't. Yeah,
Those guys are really cool. I
they're
really
fucking
like
great,
their
aren't
music.
they? That's so funny. So, I mean, that must have been. I mean, you must have spent quite a lot of time by yourself then. You know, practicing and recording, and you know, would you get like a practice room for yourself, or would you be doing it from home?
Well, I started recording myself when I was in college. I did music technology, and you could have access to little practice rooms and computers and stuff. And so I would just be making demos of my songs on Cubase and learning how to layer things up. And yeah, I think it was Cubase SX, or maybe even before that. It's pretty primitive, and it was great. Like that's where I sort of learnt my chops. And then, of course, I forgot everything that I learned at music technology and had to relearn everything again through Logic and also through like analog techniques as well. Like I did some of the... I demoed the entire Miracle album on 8-track cassette. It's just a little cassette 8-track, and actually one of the songs survived and made it onto the album. So Empty Playgrounds, Broken Swings, it's got demo in brackets next to it, but that's because it's from the 8-track demo, because it was better than the one that we tried to make for real.
Love that. I don't know if it's because I've been listening to a lot of Kevin Morby in the last couple of years, but that, you know, Tascam, you know, those kind of 8-track cassette sounds are something that I've been really into. They're
great. Like, what's cool is that you are limited with your options, obviously in tracks, but then also because you're not looking at much apart from some EQ and maybe like a pan knob. You just go like, well, now that it's recorded, that sounds kind of cool. Maybe that's it. And so as opposed to Logic, where you record something and you go, all right, now it's time to EQ, and now it's time to compress, and now it's time to do this and that. It's like,
and then by the end of it, it sounds completely different to the thing that you mic'd up.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, like, cassette tape has a certain character to it, which is already quite compressed and sort of a smile EQ. So the mid range is it's either an upside down smile or a happy smile, depending on how you look at it, depending on the tape machine.
Yeah.
But you know, there is character there already, whereas digital is very flat.
Would you say that's something that, you know, have you learned a lesson in that over the last 10 years recording yourself, you know, between digital and analog, and finding your carving, you know, where you feel comfortable in all that, your outlook on it?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I like both. And on the last record, there's lots of different techniques there. Like, obviously I work with Brendan Williams, who is my co-producer, and he is, he's brilliant, and he's such a great recording engineer, as well as someone with lots of great ideas. So like the digital, like, heart of the record, if you like, is all like Logic and lots of brilliant preamps and microphones. But then there's also lots of stuff from my side of it, which is like using Verispeed on Logic, or using cassette dictaphones for a certain quality, and messing about with the rewind and the fast forward buttons, and also, like I said, the Yamaha MT8X 8-track. And so I think recording by myself and trying lots of different things totally built the sound that I've ended up with today.
Yeah.
And that's like it comes from recording yourself, being alone. You have to experiment more.
And I suppose you find out what you like doing that.
Yeah, and you find out like how to do stuff, which I think is really useful. I think so many people are recording themselves these days, and it's great because maybe you don't have to ask somebody else to do something for you, and maybe you can get closer to what you actually want to sound like, rather than someone else's approximation of it.
I feel like that's certainly becoming a pretty widespread thing, you know, taking matters into your own hands.
Yeah, and I think it's born out of necessity, really. It's so hard with the internet. There's such a proliferation of new music and bands. If you want to get your music out there, maybe you don't have time to like find a label, find a producer.
Yeah.
You certainly won't have the money initially. So the only way is just to start, just to do something and put it out there.
Working with Brendan, was there a lot of discipline there, in terms of scheduling and recording 4 or 5 days a week? I mean, how did it work out for recording Miracle?
Well, the thing is like, just like me, like Brendan works he's got a day job as well. Of course, it's in recording. He works at the University of Salford as one of the heads of the recording department. But it's kind of his day job, and he needs time off to do projects like this. So we're constantly working around each other's scheduling. This record started with basic tracking, which was, we recorded grand piano in Peel Hall in Salford, which is, there's this big Steinway grand piano that's really beautiful and quite old. And we did most of the basic tracks of piano there, and we recorded basic tracks of acoustic guitar there. And so when we went to Giant Wafer, which is in the Welsh countryside, we had these bare bones of the tracks that we did to clicks, or like clicks with tempo maps sometimes. And then we built the drums and the bass on top of that. So we did it in that order. I think everything apart from one was started with either acoustic guitar or piano first.
I can imagine, yeah, that's such a great idea to record piano somewhere where it's going to have such a lovely reverb or echo or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great room. We tried to get a really direct sound. We did get some room sound as well. Mostly the Peel Hall was just for the atmospheric effect for me playing.
Great, yeah. That feel funny, both of you working around, your part-time jobs. I suppose that's what everyone does in music now, COVID or no COVID.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was funny when the government was asking people to retrain because, I mean, they're so late. We've already retrained.
This is
we
it.
Retrained. We're training to be musicians, never mind anything else. We're already fully qualified baristas, bartenders. Now I'm a language teacher, so I teach English to people that are non-native speakers, so mostly French and German people, and I do it all online.
Brilliant. How did you get into that?
It was something where I started volunteering, doing it in Manchester, and I thought, well, this would be great if it was a full-time thing, so I spoke to some people I knew that did it, and I managed to get a job doing it for a company in France. And it's a job that's really flexible, and I'm really happy about that because I make my own schedule. It's a little bit better paid than working in a bar, and a little bit less soul destroying as well.
Could you, could you do that on tour? Could you do that traveling around?
Yeah, it is possible. I mean, I have done it whilst traveling. It could be incredibly difficult logistically, depending on your schedule. But I mean, like I say, you have to be so organized these days to be a musician and to work. It's not out of the question. I might just book myself a couple of weeks off for those tours, though.
Was there a moment that you realized that it kind of struck you like, I'm going to have to be pretty organized? Did you learn that fairly early on?
Yeah, I mean, even when I was working in cafes and bars and stuff, it was like, first of all, these 2 weeks of holiday that I've accrued, that's going to be this trip, or I'm going to have to save money from my job to pay for this van hire or this practice room. So it slowly becomes more and more organized. And then when I started teaching full time and I had more control over my schedule, of course, then you can organize it even more and like refine it. And so also because I manage myself, I quite enjoy that aspect of it because literally everyone just talks to me about what's happening. So the Memphis Industries, my label, and my PR and radio pluggers, they all just go, "Hey Tom, do you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll put it in my schedule, which I control."
Yeah, brilliant. With the label, I mean, how, because obviously, I mean, it's taken me a few years to learn that, sounds silly to say maybe, but so many companies do things differently. So getting to learn and getting to know and building that relationship? I mean, what is your relationship with Memphis Industries? When did that start?
Well, a really good friend of mine and a great event promoter and booker is Aid Dovey, and he used to work for the Albert Hall in Manchester, and he's worked at Deaf Institute and all the great Manchester venues. So I sent some music to him, or was it that? No, he came down to the studio by chance and heard us playing something, and he was like, "This sounds great. Let me send it to a booking agent that I know." And then the booking agent said, "I know the guys at Memphis Industries, if you want me to send them this song." And so they sent them the song, and it piqued their interest, and then we sort of drip fed them songs, me and my producer, from A Dream Is You, the first album, until they were like, "All right, okay, we'll come over and listen to the rest of it." We said that we gave them 3 songs, and then we were like, "Oh, if you want to hear the rest, you'll have to come to Manchester."
Strategic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind
was
of have
that
to be.
Did you find that kind of like nerve-wracking? Were you a bit sort of nervous about finding a?
It was horrible. I mean, I love the guys at my label, and now I wish I hadn't really put them through that, because it must have been so much pressure for them. Like, I was in the studio with like a checklist in my hand, because I was still deciding on the track order, and I was like kind of changing. I was like writing on this little piece of paper, and I must have looked like so insane to Ollie, but he liked the record, and he sent us a contract after that, so it worked.
So we got you down as a barista, a child in a sort of children's play center.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful with that definition. I guess you could call me a furry monster. That's even worse.
I think it is, isn't it?
A mascot. You can call me a mascot / barista / barman.
And teaching English.
Language teacher, yeah.
What are there any that we're missing?
I worked in a steel mill.
How was that? I'm from below. I'm south of the Watford Gap. I'd have no idea.
It was all right. It was. I worked for my uncle for a bit, and I was mainly just moving scrap metal around, sweeping the floor. I did some buffing as well. Like making this nice steel worktop shiny. Jobs like that. I was a paper boy. That was the worst, because you have your Saturday and your Sunday, right? And you go to school, and Saturday and Sunday is the best, right? Because you get to have a lie-in. But not if you're a paper boy. You have to get up at 6, and you have to go and lug heavy papers around, and then they'll give you a fiver for 2 days' work.
Yeah,
Can you believe it?
That's fucked. It's fucked, isn't it? I forgot about like the weight of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so heavy.
Build up your muscles.
Just gives you a really sore shoulder.
Looking forward, when Miracle's coming out, how's it feeling right now? And life's getting back to normal now, isn't it? Really, I know I've had the fear the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I've been really lucky because my work has just been the same all the way through the pandemic. More and more people have been taking English lessons because there's less to do. So I'm lucky because I don't have to switch back to another life. I could just continue, and I'm super excited about the album coming out. I mean, it's had some really great support from Radio 6, which I had no idea was going to happen, so that's a really nice surprise.
Brilliant. I can't wait. I mean, I just said before we started pressing record on this, but Bad Hair Day, I've been listening to it every day. It's ace. I love it.
Oh, it's so nice. Thank you.
Good feeling about it.
Sick. I mean, you never know. You just make it, and you just hope people like it.
Do you feel more leveled out mentally than you did 10 years ago?
Absolutely. There's nothing. Work is the great leveler. Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely had a more inflated sense of self when I was 20 years old. Maybe a lot of us do, but that was crushed out of me. That 40 hour weeks will that'll crush that right out of you. And that's what I think people should remember that about new artists. Not just me, like literally every single musician that you hear that's just gotten on that C list or that's just putting that record out, they're making this in their spare time.
Totally.
And so I don't know. I think it's more impressive than, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be an established artist, but it's kind of a far off dream to go like, oh yeah, I can spend all my time on this. To me, it's much more impressive if someone goes, so yeah, I did this in the wee hours because in the normal hours I was covered in, I don't know, coffee grounds.
Right. All of our favorite folk artists have basically been that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what's cool about this podcast. When I heard about it, it was like, oh, that's a cool idea because it's very, very relevant.
So good to hear. Thanks, man. And it is true. I mean, it's a general level of respect and also admiration and, you know, just an acknowledgement that people, you know, work really hard for their art.
For sure. I mean, and then at the same time, you still don't have to like their music just because they work a shit job. I mean, like maybe one thing the whole pandemic thing has taught us is that we have a greater empathy with the common man, or at least I do. Obviously, we found out that some people have no empathy whatsoever, but
this is it.
Yeah. but generally, we respect each other's time more. We value it more, and that's a cool thing, I think.
Absolutely, that's certainly true here. Well, Francis, thanks so much for giving me your time today. It's been so nice to chat, and you know, your story is unique, and it's amazing to hear you talk about it.
Oh, thanks so much. It's been amazing. I never thought I'd get to talk about being a furry monster in a kids' play center. Never thought I'd have to remember that again.
Well, I'm going to remember that for a long time. And
if you're happy and you know,
if I get that job at Watford FC at Vicarage Road, you're going to be the first person I'm going to call to be Harry the Hornet.
I'd expect nothing less.
What are you up to for the rest of the day?
Working.
Great. Well, I'm so excited for Miracle. It sounds amazing. Buzzing
Thank
for
you.
it. And you're playing the Lexington, I just read on your website.
Yeah, that's right.
The Victoria.
Yeah, same thing, right?
Yeah.
1st of July, playing in Manchester, Deaf Institute on the 2nd. So really excited. It's some of our biggest headline shows. So
brilliant.
Really psyched.
And Deaf Institute just sort of survived the near sort of cull, sort of, didn't it?
Yeah.
Which
it's great.
Is amazing.
I think Tim Burgess had a lot to do with that. So
yeah, brilliant.
Thanks, Tim.
Shout out Tim Burgess. So there we go. Lovely chap. Miracle is out this Friday. Go ahead and pick that up online if you don't want to go outside. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you next week. Here's Sparrer.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.